Okay, it looks like this is on. Um, Thanks so much for joining us on this informal conversation. We thought it would be really fun to start doing these more in the garden because as we bring up different themes and topics, we also realize that we have a huge number of people right within our little Facebook community that we can tap into for their thoughts. And their feedback and insight. And in particular, today, I'm really excited to introduce Stefana Serafina. She's also a member of the Garden, as well as one of my embodiment teachers and friends. And I think that a lot of what she'll have to offer in this conversation will help us in our own personal exploration with embodiment. So just to let you know a little bit more about Stefana, she's a movement and embodiment educator, and she's also a women's empowerment facilitator based in the San Francisco Bay Area. And she developed her organization, Intuitive Body and Dance, as a platform for women's embodied empowerment through the exploration of the female body's native states of sensual awareness, creative expression, and intuitive knowing. And I've also had the pleasure of being a part of her workshops and classes. And I can absolutely say that they've been really transformative for me just in connecting to my own body and also my own passion for dance, which I really haven't explored until the past maybe 2 or 3 years. So let's get right to it, Stefana. Thank you so much for agreeing to have this conversation and to just give us your own thoughts on what embodiment is.
Yeah, I appreciate the invitation. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. So first of all, I would love for you to maybe give us your definition of embodiment. Like what does it feel like for you? And yeah, how do you define it?
Yeah, I think it's a really foundational question, right, to begin with. And, I think one of the reasons why it's really important to define embodiment is because it's a word that gets a lot of, traction these days, and it's really out there. It's used a lot. But I feel like we often fall short of the true understanding of what embodiment may entail. And I feel like the most basic way to really speak to the meaning of embodiment or the embodiment of embodiment is to name that on a deepest level, it's about deeply inhabiting ourselves, deeply and fully inhabiting ourselves. And then, of course, there could be a lot of interpretation around what that may mean. But if I appreciate you asking what it really personally means to me, and the way I see embodiment, obviously it has to do with the body. So it is about being in the body, but it is about a very deeply sensitive and aware way of being in the body. And I feel like one of the ways in which we really have to develop and deepen our understanding of embodiment is to really understand that when we say body, we don't really just name the physical, living, beautiful organism of muscle, tissue, bone, tooth, hair, which in itself is already amazing. It's an amazingly intelligent living system. But there's more to it. When I say body, I truly mean this deeply intelligent system, organism that is a bridge to the deeper psyche. It is the organism, the intelligence, the genius that speaks and directly connects us to our deeper life. And when I say deeper life, I mean our dreams and symbolic awareness, that kind of reality that bends linear time and space and speaks the language of nature. It speaks the language of phases and lunar cycles. And, it's just really helpful to become aware of the fact that even as you and I speak, even though we're virtually connecting through space and not physically together, it is very likely that our bodies are speaking the language of aligning and synchronizing, and our cycles are beginning to align together. And we're responding to some lunar cycle or to some ocean tide, and we're actually constantly in relationship with the living environment. And so this interconnectedness and intelligence, that is the intelligence of life, is what we have access to through the body.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, Stefana. And as you were saying that, the word that came into my mind, and actually before it was even a word, it was just a feeling in my body, was this sense of resonance with what you were expressing. And I think that also, having been in your workshops and classes, that's been my experience. Like, oh, there's suddenly this new resonance with my environment, with my body, with my mind and my spirit. And I'm so accustomed to, having people tell me like, oh, you're in your mind too much. And what I really appreciated about you is that it wasn't about like, oh, get out of your mind and into your body. It really did feel like it was about this interconnectedness of all of these parts of ourselves that we sometimes tend to really separate. And that said, I really wanted to ask you about your work. And I was looking at your website today, and I noticed that your homepage has this beautiful title. It's Intuitive Body and Dance, Freeing the Female Body, Empowering the Feminine Soul. So I'd love for you to just talk about your work with women specifically, and maybe some of the unique challenges that the women you've worked with have had with embodiment, and what are some of the transformations that they get to experience in working with you?
Yeah, I'd love to say more about that. Well, so as we just named, there's so many parts of ourselves that are fragmented and put away, and especially in a predominantly disembodied culture, and a culture that has been primarily focused on intellectual development and achievement and the masculine values. It is clear that the parts of ourselves that have been that are really nourished by the creative acts and the ritualistic acts of inhabiting ourselves and expressing ourselves, or sensing ourselves more deeply, or slowing down enough to speak the language of nature. All of those parts that feel more feminine in nature, they've been silenced, to say the least. They have been put away in the compartments of the self. And so I feel that is what comes up most often when I begin working with women first, and especially women who haven't really had a chance to kind of leave the more structured, say the corporate environment, or that, what I was just describing is the cultural backdrop that is, feels the normal and the normalcy. And so that's what's coming up when we begin working together at first. The inhibition, the inhibited aspects of self that are, that have been put away in those ways. And the way that really shows up in the body is symptoms of stiffness and tightness and closure, and the inability to move freely or to really deeply inhabit and embody ourselves, our voices, our power. So there's something incredibly liberating that begins happening when a woman starts sensing her hips again, or beginning to breathe deeply into her pelvic bone, or to her pelvic bowl again, or really touching down into the sacredness of the womb space, and being able to really draw on that felt sense, awareness, and knowing of self. And so, yeah, we truly run into a lot of inner walls and barriers, and all of the walls, it feels like the right word to say, that we have built ourselves within our own body mind systems, against being fluid and emotionally expressed and creatively able. So once we begin moving with this new awareness, then those, walls begin crumbling on their own accord. It's kind of this like new, and that is why I call it the liberating the genius of the female body, and therefore empowering the feminine soul, because they really coexist. It's a symbiotic relationship between the feminine body and the female soul and the feminine soul. And in some ways, they're one and the same.
Hmm. And do you find that when I know that you work predominantly with women, but when it comes to embodiment, do you also feel that men have similar challenges with it, or are they slightly different, just kind of given the differences in cultural conditioning?
Mm-hmm. I definitely believe that embodiment is just as important for men as it is for women. I also do understand and feel and see that there are definitely quite a few, differences, palpable, tangible differences in how men orient towards embodiment. The one thing that's clear in our, the basic biological, kind of contrast between men and women is that men are, centered differently. They're moving more along the vertical axis, and they're more pointed. They're, straight up. They're more linear in their orientation. And so it makes a lot of sense that men would enter the world of embodiment very differently. For women, I feel it's actually really important to name this and to understand this, that women's embodiment begins with the restoring of the capacity for sensitivity and feeling ourselves on the inside. And there's something fundamental also in reorienting to ourselves through this round and fluid way of being woman, which really comes back down to the biological kind of the formative aspect of our biology, that our primary female organs, the vagina, the pelvic opening is round, the barrel of the vagina, to be truly experienced. You would want to shift your primary movements to become soft and round and fluid. So that is like very primary. It may seem really basic, but it really orients us to embodiment in a very different way. And it affects our sexuality. It affects the way we speak, the way we gesture, the way we present in the world, the way we experience emotion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
so,
beautiful.
Yeah.
And again, as you were talking, I was feeling myself sort of moving and swaying and undulating as well. So it's interesting how it feels like there is a natural tendency to want to move a certain way, and how that instinct can sometimes get frozen or interrupted somewhere along the way. So I was hoping that perhaps you could also lead us in just a really short exercise that helps us to just really reorient with our bodies and, our instincts and, the awareness that's already present within us.
Yeah, I would love to. It seems like it's already happening right here between the two of us. And I noticed that it's something that comes up almost, not immediately, but within the first 10 minutes of women coming together, whether it's online or in one of my, in-person groups. Once I begin kind of speaking and naming these things that we all know within ourselves, and begin recognizing and feeling the resonance, I begin noticing women, just very spontaneously and very naturally entering these just gentle, undulating around movements, or kind of pelvic round or rocking movements. And it feels like it's this immediate, kind of syncing up with their bodies and with each other. And so what I would invite, I'm aware that we're mostly addressing and speaking to women through with this conversation, right?
Yeah,
So,
primarily. There's a few men in there, but I think they
oh,
can
okay.
also
Yeah.
probably benefit from what we're talking about here too.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to know because I can definitely orient, towards the mixed gender. And I feel like the most basic way to begin is slow down. Slow down enough so you can really feel your breath without effort all the way into your pelvic bowl. And we all have it, all genders have it. The pelvic, the deep bowl that's kind of held by the pelvic bone and within the soft of our bellies. And you will notice that if you send your breath again without effort, just sending it and allowing it, the inhale to reach all the way to the inside of the pelvic floor, the inside of the perineum. You will notice that your shoulders will soften and your jaw will probably soften. And you will touch down, so to speak, and root yourself at your base. And from there, you can just take a couple of more breaths to notice whether, with the softening of the pelvic opening or the pelvic floor, you can actually draw your next inhale from the ground up through the pelvic opening, through the perineum. I call it the second mouth, the other mouth. Just allowing the inhale to come in and feed and nourish the womb space or the hara or the belly first, instead of pumping the chest top down. And just to allow your whole body to soften to that. And I will actually suggest here, since we are doing a very brief practice, just to allow yourself to feel from here the felt state of yourself at this moment. To take a couple of moments to just ask yourself, how am I on the inside? And to allow the answer to come with sensations, with a felt awareness of emptiness or heaviness or heat in different parts of the body, or perhaps a sinking in the chest or the heart, or a slouching of the shoulders. Like, what is your shape right now? What does your belly know about how you're doing today? What does the temperature of your feet may say about how connected you are to the earth at this moment? And taking these overall sensations of the body-mind, just allow them to kind of move through you and perhaps make an image of themselves. Give you one image, maybe symbolic, maybe like a quick image of yourself or an animal or anything that pops up, really. That further connects you to the answer to the question, how am I doing? Allowing some symbolic representation to come in. And then in this last moment here, allowing this image and the sensations creating it, that inner state of yours right now, to respond to the question, how would it move if it had to express? How would I shape or gesture or move in order to say something deeply true about myself in this moment? And I'm just going to count to 3, and you can allow for this shaping of the body or gentle movement or gesture to arise spontaneously. 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, and as you can notice, and as I can also witness in your body and in mine, this is just the beginning, like an entryway. And likely, if you've come this far, you'll want to spend the next 10 minutes just really following this dream of your body, as I call it, the dreamscape that the body's moving in.
That was so beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I just wanted to end this conversation by talking about Stefana's Embodied Studied online program, which is a 3-month rediscovery and empowerment program for women. And I understand that it begins in a few days. And I've actually taken this program with Stefana before. It was last fall. And prior to that, I had also been in one of her groups that was an in-person group. And both experiences were incredibly transformative for me. And we did a lot of exercises similar to the one that Stefana just shared with us right now. And there is such a depth and such a power to this work. And for me personally, as a writer, as someone who has historically seen myself as not being embodied, to go through that journey and to really allow, my sense of creativity, my sense of aliveness to come from this deeper resource was so incredible to me. And it just also gave me an opportunity to really connect to the fact that my body is talking to me all the time. And it's giving me information all the time about myself and my emotions, but also my environment. It's just a really remarkable experience. So Stefana, I just wanted to see if you wanted to give us a little bit more information about this program and, just your intentions with it. And I know you also have an in-person version of the program, but I'm curious, how do you translate embodiment into this online format?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. Yeah, this edition of the Embodied Study Program begins in about 10 days from now, and it's offered twice a year online and once a year in person. And I think, as you named, it's an opportunity to really deepen into the language that we were just working with, and allow it to really take you off guard and surprise you and sweep you off your feet, and actually basically take your head off, as I say, because it allows you to really sink into this other non-linear language of the deeper psyche. And how I translate embodiment through an online program is by just very much, kind of inhabiting the virtual space, much like you and I are right now, connecting almost like as if we're in the room together, and then really guiding women through these core practices of reinventing and re-inhabiting their personal grounds, their, like the deepening and reconnecting to their roots. And then from there, allowing their life's process to emerge. And as you know, like what we do is really, we're asking the most charged questions of our lives right now. And, and kind of looking into the most vibrant themes of our lives through this creative, intuitive intelligence of the body. And, the body as defined as this like really intelligent organism attuned to the whole. And so that's Well, we do. We engage in a lot of practice. It's very experiential, and it's held with a lot of depth and care and commitment from the sisterhood. And I guess it will help to say that one of the groups is already full. So I'm looking at creating a second group. And if people are interested, they should get in touch pretty soon.
Yeah, fantastic. So we'll make sure when we post this conversation that we'll also put your contact information and your website on the post, so that people can find you.
Yeah, and can I just add one more thing?
Yeah,
Just something that's always a resource for women and men alike, and all genders, and is always free, is the Embodied Way podcast. And you can find that at embodiedway.com. And their conversations, I host the podcast and I speak to embodiment visionaries and leaders and authors and speakers that have dedicated their lives to returning to our senses in the virtual age. And so those are really inspiring conversations, always available and always free.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Stefana. This was really a pleasure. And I'm looking
You're so welcome.
Dancing with you again at some point in the future.
Likewise. And thank you so much for having me, and also for developing such a sweet and nourishing community, and really caring for bringing these important themes into people's lives.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're very passionate about all of that. So
great. Thank you, Nirmala. See you soon.
Okay, bye.